Hey all, welcome to the Business of Gaming podcast. Today we're at Bat City Games and Comics in Austin, Texas. I'm Josh from Game Haven Guild, and I'm here with Brendan, one of the owners who opened the store almost 2 years ago. Tell us about the store. The store is coming up on 2 years old. What was the kind of origin story of it? What brought you around to wanting to open up this store?
Well, I mean, I have a friend, my partner, who's up in Dallas, a work friend of mine. We were looking for something to invest in. And so the whole gambit from do we flip houses, do we buy a Subway or something like that, just things, just something to have on the side to kind of give us something to look at. And I'd originally come from Arizona. I wasn't born there, but I was spent a good part of my development years there. And there was a comic book shop there, and I called it Atomic Comics, and they were very popular in Arizona. Had same vibe that we're going for here, like much, very clean, crisp. We always describe this shop as kind of an Apple store smashed into a comic book game shop, kind of give you that vibe. And so I brought that up with him. And when I started looking at the map of how Austin's set up, you see a ton of board game shops and comic book shops north of the river, but there wasn't a ton south, right? There's, a couple here and there. And when we started honing down on it, we kind of saw this desert here, like in this part of town. So we started putting a business case together, which was, kind of tough. There's not really a lot out there that tells you exactly what it is. There was one place that had where you could do franchising, so you could get a little bit of the data on what it would do. But I mean, we spent time just sitting outside shops in Dallas or here, just watching how many people walk in and out of the shop and how big does their bag look to try to figure out what it would be. But I think we were surprised in some of what we had started off with the business case and where we're at now. At the time, we had somebody who came out from Arizona who helped us get it set up. Did a lot of work in the beginning. Unfortunately, we had to part ways, but we got it to where we were pretty solid with the business case. We were wrong in a couple major things in the right way, but specifically, what would our split be? We did not anticipate Magic the Gathering being nearly as large as it is. It is so huge.
Tell us about the beginning and then now. Like, what did you think? Is you got a big games, you got a big comics section. Within games, you have a massive board game section. You've got some card games and some wargaming. Like, what did you think your split was going to be, kind of the different groups, versus how's it actually come through?
Those are probably we anticipated we would be. The big buckets would be comics, and then that's split into used and new comics. Graphic novels in there too. So there's kind of three: graphic novels, used comics, and new comics. Board games, that was the gaming part of it. And we didn't really anticipate that Magic, Pokemon, Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited. We didn't really think too much about that. It wasn't really up on that sport of it. And then Warhammer kind of came along probably about the 6 to 8 month mark. And we were just looking, the idea that we really built the store around was diversification, right? If you got a big comic book release coming out, like the Absolutes for DC or Invincible Battle Beast, then you have that as a pillar to help with your revenue. But when there's a kind of a dry spell in comics, you might have a big release in Magic, or you might have a big release in Pokemon. You might have Wingspan come out, or Finspan, extension there. So what we found is that diversification is the huge part of what keeps the business going, right? So you can see a large percentage in multiple groups, as opposed to just all depending upon a Magic release. So, that's great. At some point, I don't know when it'll be, but there might be a saturation to Magic. Doesn't appear to be. They just did Final Fantasy and it was massive. But at some point you worry about that. So I want to make sure that we have the strong diversification. That's where we kind of focused. And that's, to me, the big difference was the trading games. Those we didn't anticipate being the size they started. So that was where we had to give them more space and more attention and focus.
When I look at the store, you got a really big store. Is this like 3,500 square feet?
Yeah, that's a good guess. So we're about 4,000 with our store. So if you take out our storeroom, we're about 3,500 in actual retail space, and we have a large portion of it dedicated to being able to set up and play games.
Yeah, that's
8 permanent tables.
Looks like close to maybe 25% of the store, if not, is around gaming space.
Yep. And then we try to leave, as you can see here, this space is pretty open. So we get 6 or 8 more tables over here. I mean, we can get, on a Wednesday night when we do Commander, we'll get 60 plus people playing Commander right there. So that's great. It's usually about 15 tables. So it's about the about the limits of we can do. Anything more than that, we'd have to do bunk bed tables or something that go up or go outside. We talked about the weather's nice. We could probably put a couple outside. So
Sure. Tell me about the expectations on that area, right? How, when you opened the shop, did you expect the in-store gaming part to be a big part of it? And how has that changed your thoughts over the last 2 years?
yeah, we definitely planned. I mean, we built out 6 or 7 tables to start, the permanent tables. So we that was always a plan from the beginning, and we always had our demo wall with that I just brought all the games from my house and said, yeah, well, and then eventually people just donate games or we get demo games from vendors. The one thing we had thought we would do is the first couple of months we would have it set up in reservations, and then we thought at some point that we would charge for people to reserve tables, and we've made the decision over time that we'll never do that. So we want people just to come in and play. I mean, I don't care if somebody comes in and sits at a table for 3 hours, doesn't buy anything in the shop. To me, that we're building that community where we just want people to have fun. What we found is that people then will support the community. They'll buy our games here. We obviously can't always compete with Amazon because someone's selling out of their garage and doesn't have rent, utilities. But someone's willing to pay $5 or $10 more for a game if they buy it from a shop that they sit down and play it. They crack it open right there, or they played the demo game and they liked it, and then they play it. Or they'll buy snacks and they'll buy, they'll buy a pop they like or something like that. So that was one thing we thought at some point once we got popular enough that we may rent out the tables, but we've made the decision not to do that. So
Do you still take reservations for the tables?
Yep. So you do it right online. So we have there's 4 high tops and 4 regular seated tables, and you can go in and reserve them for 2 hours at a time. You can even do it for more than that. You just got to do 2 reservations, and you can do that. I think we have it set up now a month or 2 out.
Oh, great.
Yep. And we block off periods because we have obviously Wednesday nights are a no-go. We have all the magic going on. We have like every other Saturday, there's a big board gaming group that comes here on their own. So they use up 6 or 8 tables just by themselves. So there's always the ability to walk in and we'll set up a table for you if those are all reserved.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to flex with the capacity we need. So
tell me about that community building. In particular, you're just opening up. People are finding about the store by driving by. You've got a great location here, but what were you doing to try and build that community at first?
Yeah. So that's the toughest thing with anything you start, right? So we wanted to make sure, like you said, we got the location. We wanted to get a really bright and recognizable sign. So we did that. We really pushed and really asked for reviews online. That to me kicks off. It gets it to the top of to the searches. It helps with the algorithms. We do some advertising like on Google just to kind of make sure it helps bump us up when we're looking for comics and board games. But really it's word of mouth. I mean, to be 100% honest with you, the way you build a community is you become part of the community, just a good place to be. You can't fake it. Yeah. So we really try to welcome people when they come in the shop. We try to ask what they're looking for, what they need. We explain how our reservation tables work. And you just get to know people, and I'm from New England, from Boston, the old show Cheers, right? You just want people to know your name. And so we have, I wouldn't say dozens, we probably have 100+ customers now that come in here multiple times a week, and we just know their name, and they come in and they buy a pack at lunch when they're at work, and they go off and they come back later to play Magic that night. So that to me it's not even a grind. It's just a slow process. Yeah. Right? And you need to be committed to it. And you need to make sure your employees are on board, right? Because I can't be here 24/7. I have a regular Monday through Friday day job. So, so you have to make sure your employees have that same vision. And that's where we're lucky. We've been really good with that. So good.
The marketing side of it, you said you're doing a little bit of Google, keyword type. Any other big marketing things that have either worked or not worked in the last 2 years?
So we did Facebook advertising periodically. It's hard to say how much that worked. We just decided not to do more of it. We'll do it like during ACL, and we'll do like a 2-mile radius around ACL. So basically everybody who's in there gets it on their phone and kind of starts buying. We do see some pickup in traffic for that. We've investigated whether or not we would do like mailers to homes or anything like that. And to be honest with you, it just seems to be word of mouth seems to be working well for us. We watch the gap between new customers and return customers, and it's pretty consistent organic growth process. And so we've toyed with And at some point I'll convince my partner, maybe we'll go with like a digital sign up front. Cause I think that might help us with, being able to advertise Magic tournaments or events coming up. And so it's a little bit more dynamic than just a static sign. But they're pretty big investments. So you gotta be sure that they're going to generate additional revenue for the shop. We've given out gift cards. We've had my daughter and her fiance went to a con, and while people were waiting in line, gave out cards and stuff to the shop. But all those are really tough to measure. I didn't really see a lot of those coming back. So I think what we found is that location, when I check someone out, I ask if they're first time with us, that's how they found out about us. And I would say, not even joke, right, 75% is just they saw the sign and they drove by. Right?
Yeah.
That's why the digital sign may be a good option, because it gives a little bit more like oomph of what's going on, like, free comics, like, free comic book day. It's like, well, wait a minute, what, free, and stop in. So those type of things. So that to me is, I think a lot of people don't plan what they go do. Like they just driving out, they're out for the day and they're going to go have lunch, or they're going to Target. And they go, oh, let's stop. We've driven by this 10 times. Let's eventually stop.
Yeah.
And that I think is, and then once you kind of, if there's a value there and people feel welcome, then they're just going to come back with friends.
How about, then that builds in the conversation on choosing this location. This for sure was probably not the cheapest location you looked at. You're right on one of the major highways. You got great street visibility. Again, that sign, it's noticeable coming down the highway. What was your thought process on choosing this location, weighing that kind of cost of rent versus that visibility?
Yeah. I mean, well, the one thing is we had, like, when we first did this, someone could have told us this rent and this rent, and we had no idea what was normal, right? We were really good. We got a realtor that was very helpful with us, had done commercial real estate. And to be 100% honest, this was actually the first thing we looked at. And we looked at some other things. This had been empty for probably 2 years, maybe 3 or more. I mean, I think maybe even through the whole pandemic. So it was an old Payless shoe shop, still painted like Payless. It was yellow walls, and it had the carpeting that was glued down and all that, had all the fixtures on the inside. So it didn't look anything like this, right? And it had, but we liked the location. I like the fact that you're in a Walmart parking lot, you have all the parking you can possibly need. That in Austin is such a huge deal, right? You go to places and you got 5 spots, and it's just like, how do you host 60 people and they have 5 slots, right? So that was a major plus. We were worried about like only being able to get it to one direction, but this is Texas. Everyone's used to that. So they're used to doing that U-turn. So that would end up, Becky, in Arizona, I mean, everything's gridded. You don't have to ever worry about that. You just turn in wherever you want to turn in, but people are used to that here. So that was not bad. So we dug into it, and I think we got a pretty decent deal because of it had been sitting empty for so long. So maybe 2 years later, it might've been a little bit tougher, but it was still, when we compared it to some of the shops that, had opened in Arizona and so forth, there was still much higher rent. I mean, so that's a thing, right? And like you mentioned, a lot of shops are more like the one size, 1,200 square foot. And so when we're going close to 4,000 square feet, you're making a big investment. But we were comfortable in that we needed that space to have that space. It's kind of weird. Like we needed it to do that, right? You can't put 8 tables or 15 tables when you're set up fully in a 1,200 square foot spot, right? So you're kind of like a fish in a 10-gallon fish tank. You can't grow, right? Like, and so we kind of leaned out there, and when we first opened, shelves were bare, right? We couldn't get enough product in, and it looked pretty empty. And then that's when people who hadn't been in for a year came in here and was like, wow, you guys really got everything, like filled out your shelves, and now I don't have enough space down to shelves, right? And because I buy a lot of expansions. But yeah, so that we figured we'd grow into it, right? And we had the ability, we kind of had the capital to be able to survive that period of time, to grow up to the revenue, to where the revenue now justifies the space. At the beginning, the revenue didn't. For the first 6 to 12 months, didn't justify the space, but you have to have that longer vision.
It was that. So that was kind of your ramp. Was it about 12-month mark is where
that's what we anticipated. We opened in September, so we had a little bit of a benefit of having one holiday season. So that kind of got us, bumped up a little bit from there. And then we did a lot of sweat equity and we did a lot of the investment on upgrading the shop. So we were able to get some advance on, so we didn't have to pay rent for a little while, which is helpful to help keep you, cash flow. You they either give you money to do it or you do it. You know, there's always, you pay for it at the end, but it just was allowed us to kind of get our feet underneath us and get kind of stabilized. I would say that first January, February after that kind of slowed down, and that was, we weren't worried at all, but it was definitely the lull, like after the storms and Christmas. And then just some magic. That's when magic really started picking up, was probably about the 4 to 5 month mark. And we were lucky enough to have 1 or 2 customers that said, hey, you should do this. And we listened. That's the one thing that I think I pride ourselves on, is when I got 5 or 10 magic people here and I was like, you tell me what you want. Like, I'm not setting the rules on how you do this. Do you guys want to do a tournament style? Do you want to do buy-in? Do you want to just meet and play and all those things? And that it just grew organically from there. And so that was probably, like I said, the most fortuitous thing was getting that started. And once we got there, then, you know, magic people, some of them play Warhammer and some of them play D&D, and then they bring in friends and they bring in friends, and it's the whole, you know, kaleidoscope thing where you just get more friends, and then we have, sometimes you get here around 7:30 on Wednesday night and you're standing around waiting to play magic because there's no open tables. So, so that's kind of where we want to be.
I've been here on a Wednesday night where your line is at your register waiting for a table. And it's very, very both impressive, but also a little concerning on, wow, there's that many people right here waiting to play Magic.
Yeah. And that's what we have to, we tried to figure, like I said, how to shoehorn extra tables in. And it's a delicate balance between, like, you know, you need 95% of the time you need the retail space. And then you got to figure out, like, we have a lot of things now in rollers where we consolidate everything down together, and then we have extra space. So we'll spread it back out again during the week. So perfect.
You in particular also have a pretty big online presence in terms of, you got a big storefront. You got your pre-orders set up on there. What was your initial thought about how the online business would play into your store? And then how is it actually impacting what you're doing?
That's a great question. You know, I didn't have a lot of experience. I had done a website once before. I'm an author and had published a couple of books. So I had a website for that, and I'd done some online things there. Luckily, Shopify kind of has a built-in integrated online web store. It takes a little time to learn it, but it's not too bad. We had somebody help us set that up at the beginning. And then once you learn the nuances of that, you can get moving pretty quickly and get things up there. I would say 50% maybe of our online presence is literally the people here in Austin who just buy stuff and then come in and get it, or just pre-orders, or buying pre-releases for Magic or Star Wars like this weekend. The other 50% are just random people buying stuff from Minnesota, right? They buy a pop from Minnesota. And I'm just like, how do you find that? And Google's great, right? You just Google it. And then, like I told my partner, it'd be weird. We'd sell something, and then like 3 hours later, like a Warhammer army set. And then like 2 hours later, you sell another one. And we're like, how the heck is that? Well, Google picks it up and goes, oh, I sold one from here. They have them. Yeah. So the next time it's like, oh, we'll go it again. And then if you do 2 times, then it wants to do it 3 times, right? So we'd have somebody call us up. Do you have any more of those? Right? Like, no, unfortunately, Warhammer is a different vendor. They're harder. That's one we won't talk about. But so it kind of gets surprising at times how quickly you can kind of get into that space, and then it can dry up and you go for a period of time without it. We have dabbled on eBay. The tough part about eBay is the integration. So we've had too many times where we sold something in the shop and then it was still up on the eBay, and then it would sell on eBay, and then I have to cancel an order, and that just wasn't great. eBay was hit or miss. We had a lot of high dollar Magic cards we bought from a collection, and those are great selling on eBay, but a lot of other stuff, and the fees and all that stuff, it's tough. We are thinking, we've always thought we need to get into Whatnot, because comic books are huge on Whatnot. It's just right now I'm still trying to build out the processes and the team here. I don't have a dedicated resource to put on Whatnot, but maybe I'd love to collaborate with somebody. That's but nice to say. I have 120,000 comics in storage, and it's just like, you keep 25% of what you sell. Yeah. I just sell them, right? And then I'll pay you by whatever you sell. And we'll probably do some sort of collaboration like that at some point.
So your online store, because you mentioned about the eBay problem of you sell it, but it's still in your inventory. Is your online store inventory integrated with your store inventory?
Yep, and absolutely.
So you're running your in-store POS also through Shopify, or?
Yeah, so everything is through Shopify. And then a comics, and then you use Shopify's an interesting animal. I don't know if you've ever had any interface with it, right? You go and buy it and you go, oh, it only costs me this much a month. Well, that's not right. If you want this feature, you got to do this, you got to buy this. And they really have a great business model. They have a base, and then they have a bunch of developers, and then they get a percentage of all the stuff. So, there's all kinds of different. I've talked to people that are on different Square and different things, and they all have their pluses and minuses, right? So yeah, we use Shopify for everything. We use a couple integrated apps, Manage Comics for our comic books, which does our subscription, so people can subscribe to certain series, and it pulls them automatically and brings them in. That's the greatest thing. One great thing about the Managed Comics is you can just take a electronic invoice from a customer, from a vendor, and you can import 200 different comic titles in a flash. If I buy stuff from a distributor and it's magic, I got to manually add thing, put pictures in and all that. So, so there's options where we need to look for how do we automate some of that, because that's the big challenge, that as well. But yeah, everything's integrated. So if something sells online, if we sell a pre-order, we can reserve it for a customer. We can pre-order things directly. Like if somebody wants a graphic novel, I can pre-order them for them. So it's pretty well integrated.
Great. Let's go back to your comment on some of the assortments and vendors you're dealing with and things along those lines. Has there been anything in terms of you're buying the board games? I'm assuming you're going through a couple of the big distribution folks for that. You're buying your Warhammer and your Magic Direct and or through Disty. Has there been anything that's caught you off guard in that process of collecting inventory?
So one is some of them, how difficult it was to get set up. They're very adamant about being a storefront, about being a brick and mortar. A couple of them, until we got the sign hung in the building, they wouldn't engage with us. I still have one, I won't name them, but I've literally talked to them on the phone. I've filled out their app like 3 or 4 times. We've been over for 2 years, and they're still not a distributor for them. No, they would be 4th on my list, right? But it's always good to have another option to look for something that might be in stock. So I've pretty much given up. No, I talked to the guy, and he's like, just send me the email, I'll get you going. I'm like, all right, I feel they'll build everything out within a day or so, and I'd never heard back. So maybe he's moved on. But I think they're all pretty much straightforward. There's some challenges. A couple of them are a little archaic in their websites, and a little archaic in their in the way they do processes. And one of the comic book ones is in bankruptcy at the moment, so luckily they've moved all their titles, or the titles have all moved, the other 2 big ones. So we kind of have everything covered. It kind of actually makes our life a little bit easier, because I can order from 2 instead of 3 now. So it's pretty good from that perspective. I just think the challenge in it is the massive amount of inventory you have. And that's what we're always working with. It's like, I would probably say, too often happens where, especially in comic books, someone comes and they order something off our website, and then we can't find it, right? And 25% of the time that may be us bringing in the system incorrectly, but most likely it got legs and walked out the door, right? And comics, you can't keep behind a glass shelf or anything like that. You have to have them out there on the board. So that's the tough part of the business. I'm naturally just a trusting person, and so I hate to think that people, because we have such a great set of customers, I hate to think that people periodically will walk in and walk out with something. And we at the beginning, we had all of our booster packs where you could kind of pull them off the thing yourself, and we very quickly realized that doesn't work. All right, so that was probably the biggest thing, is the inventory control at this. Once you get up there with having thousands of SKUs, can be a real challenge, right? So
yeah, I believe that. Well, taking us to present day, right? What are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges you've got in front of you right now that you're going to have to go and tackle in the next 6 months to a year?
6 months to a year probably is, how do we continue to grow? Like, what are our revenue stream opportunities? Like, do we go adjacent? Like, we look at, there are so many TCGs out there like that. It just, I get inundated once a week with a new TCG wanting to launch. And we're not primarily a card shop, right? So I don't feel comfortable carrying 30 different types of cards. And I don't have the space for that, because I have to be very careful. And whatever we dedicate space to has to move, it has to generate revenue. So where do we grow those ancillary spaces? Like, Warhammer is really kind of starting to pick up for us. We have a league going. There's now a local big club that's the Bat City Cowboys, I think they call themselves, but they were a local Warhammer thing, did really well. So we're sponsoring them. So that to me is probably one of the places where I think we can get some more traction. Star Wars Unlimited, we have a big release this weekend. We're really trying to lean into that now and trying to get more of that community going, trying to see if we can replicate. Not that we'll never do Magic. Magic is Magic. And like Pokemon has been a crazy thing this year. Like it was just out of control from a supply perspective and costing perspective. We didn't do, and we still don't do a ton of singles and used and so forth, but we'll probably delve a little bit more into that. People don't play it. We don't ever see them play it in the shop. It's more of a collector's space. So I really like to focus on the things that people play in shop. Board games doesn't have that like one thing that just goes crazy. It's like a ton of smaller games and so forth. So, but the ancillary ways of looking for how do we pick up extra revenue streams to be able, because the more diversified, like I mentioned earlier, the safer you are from something going south or people like, losing interest in.
About industry wise, what do you see happening with gaming, either the people you're talking to or the games you're working with? What do you see some of the big risks for game shops and the gaming industry coming up?
I mean, obviously the biggest, elf in the room is a tariff type of thing. Like I see it in two threats. One threat is the actual pricing of the product itself going up. That could be temporary because I've already heard of gaming distributors or manufacturers moving to, say, India or Mexico or things like that. So you can do things in the supply chain to kind of get around it or impact tariffs. My bigger concern is that if tariffs become more widespread, it takes away discretionary funds. And we're purely a discretionary shop, right? Like when you go through the pantheon of things you need food, water, house, car, healthcare, all those things. And then Magic cards are kind of should be at the bottom. Now, I will tell you, there are some folks that Magic cards are right at the top of the pantheon's list. Right at the top. They are what people will prioritize. Of like, I can eat top ramen for 2 weeks, right? I get this back. But for sure, that's where I worry the most is how do we navigate that space? And so we do some strategic things. Like, we have a lot of, see up top, we bought ahead on a lot of things. So we probably stocked out for about 6 months worth of our normal sales on some of our stuff. Just when we heard things were going to go really south and they kind of were okay. Things tend to sound like they're going to get really bad and then they come back to bad and everyone thinks bad is okay because it's not really bad, right? And so that's kind of where we've settled in. But we've definitely seen prices rise on a lot of stuff. And we do our best to kind of absorb some of it, but part of it has to get pushed on. So that to me is the biggest challenge, I think, immediately. Long term, it's just I worry about the viability of like Magic releasing something every 2 months. I just don't know, but they've been doing it for a while and it seems to be okay. But saturation I worry about there. And then there's the balance of independent game folks and then the big distributors and so forth. We have next weekend we have a tournament for a game called Breakers, which is developed by a local friend of mine. Actually, I know him now. I'm good friends with him, and so we'll have a tournament here. It's kind of like a trick-taking game with monsters and stuff in it, and rules change every round. So it's a fun game, but he's learning to navigate the game development world and all those things. But that, like I said, I probably get 2 to 3 emails a week from game developers that want to stock, and then you add in 1 or 2 local comic book artists or graphic novels, and you start. And we really want to support that. The problem is how much space can you dedicate to that and so forth. So it's a pretty big challenge. So that to me is like, how do you find out what's going to be the next hit and make sure you're part of that?
Bat City as a name.
Yeah.
As an Austin person, I think I know where it comes from, but is there a story behind the name or the logo?
I did collect comics for a good portion of my life, and I was always a Batman fan. So that to me was like kind of the perfect genesis of Bat City, and we're in the Bat City, you got Batman in there. There was a lot of debate whether it was Bat City Games and Comics or Bat City Comics and Games. It just, games and comics tend to flow better. The individual I brought over from Arizona to help us open up was a comic guy, so he wanted comics and games, and he would always answer the phone sometimes like that. But it ended up, it just flowed better with games and comics. So that was primarily it. And to be honest with you, like the logo was just, we just stumbled on that. I mean, we engaged a sign person. We said, this is our name and we'd like something that has a bat in it and kind of like the city skyline. And he gave it to his designers, and like within 24 hours, they came back with, I would say 85-90% of the logo. Right. And we were just like, hey, and then I brought it to the website guy we had and we tweaked it. And it was, the original one they gave us was more like a, more gothic, like scary looking and stuff. We're like, okay, we kept that. We still have stickers for that, but we're like, we want it to be a little bit more family friendly than that. So, so we kind of did it. And so within 48 to 72 hours, we had our logo, and it just worked out really well. And we got pretty locked in on the name almost probably within a week or two of deciding we were going to do the business. It just seemed like it was natural. It seemed like some,
Yeah.
And then I think it resonates with people pretty, that, there's the people say, hey, we're going to meet at Bat City, or some people call it BC, BCGC, there's a couple things in there. If you say that to people who are going to meet up at BC, they know where it's at. So it's worked pretty well.
Well, the last one for you, 2 years in now, what is the one piece of advice you'd give yourself 2 years ago before you opened this up?
I would say, do a little bit more investing in your employees, learning the processes. For the first probably year and a half, maybe even a little bit longer than that, I was the one driving and doing a lot of the processes in the background. We brought in somebody who now is kind of our back office person, and they've taken up a lot of that. And that was just, I just spend so much time bringing in new products, so forth. So I think that's the key, is you have to establish the process and then train it out to people. And I think that really comes down to scaling. And that's really the tough thing with things, is how do you scale? How do you keep up? And because I could walk in here and every single time I walk in, I'll say, oh, I got to move that box over here and clear that out. I got to do this. And there's so many things to do. You as the leader of the organization really have to try to limit yourself to the things that move the needle. And you have to be able to push down to the rest of your crew the things that they can do. That to me is delegating to the right levels is pretty important.
Awesome. Brendan, thank you for spending the time with us. Appreciate the conversation.
Yep.
And again, great story, and have fun with your 2-year anniversary celebration.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.